Hey, hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Shannon. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I hope you're doing so very well. Today I am bringing you my mid-year stats. This is a numbers game in this video. This is not your cup of tea, completely understand, but I am a person who likes to track my reading. I find that there's like three different hobbies in reading. There's the act of reading, there's the buying of books, and then there's the tracking of reading. And I love all three of those things. Although my bank account probably doesn't love the buying of books. But nevertheless, I track my reading, and today I am bringing you some stats from the months of January to June. So let's get into this video. The first thing I want to touch upon is goals. So every year I set a Goodreads goal, like most people do, and this year I decided that I wanted to set the goal to 60. So it's really hard to judge my reading because for 4 or 5 years I got like 50 to 55 books read. And then in lockdown I obviously read like 72 books, so I read more. But I had more time then. So I decided to kind of split the difference and go with 60. And I feel like a book a week is like very achievable for me, depending what kind of books I'm reading. But it's still achievable in the long run of the year. So I decided to go with 60 to just challenge myself that little bit more this year. And I am currently on 35 books read. So I am over halfway complete at the halfway mark of the year, which feels really good. So if I can stay on this track, I should be able to complete my goal. I have had two DNFs though, so technically it would be like 37, but I decided this year that I wanted to be a bit more lenient with myself and allow myself to DNF books that I'm just not enjoying. Even if they're for a project, a video, anything. I just want to be able to say, I'm not enjoying this book, I'm not going to read it, which has been really hard for me in previous years, but this year I feel like I'm getting more into the groove of telling myself, if you're not enjoying it, don't read it. One of the goals I set out this year for myself was to read a new release every month. Now, it doesn't have to be a release from that month, it just needs to be a 2023 release. So I have managed to do this. I've currently read seven, I believe. So, just real quick, I read the Tales of the Flower Bride. I got this in book subscription. I believe I gave this 4 or 4.5 star. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I picked this up. I'm glad I got to a book sub box because I'm terrible at doing that. It was a fun, I wouldn't say a fun read actually, because it was like dark and gothic and mystery. It was an entertaining read. Then I read All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. I read her debut last year and I really enjoyed it. It was so well done. So I jumped at the chance to read her new release. I gave this 4 stars. I will pick up her next thriller because so far I've had a 5 star and a 4 star, I believe. Maybe they were both 4 stars. I can't remember, but I have had great time with this author, so I am excited for her next book. Then I read Silent Waters. This was a mood read. I was scrolling through NetGalley. I seen that LV Matthews had her new book on NetGalley for read now, and I met this author at Granite Noir not last year but the year before, and I have a signed copy of The Twins, which I still haven't read yet. I know. I read their new book, but haven't read the book that I own that's signed and dedicated to me. Makes no sense. But I read Silent Waters, I gave it 4 stars, and it makes me so much more interested in reading The Twins, which I have physically, which I would have done, but I was looking for a Kindle book. So yeah, I read this. Next, we have Dear Medusa by Olivia Cole. I actually stumbled upon this on Amazon, seen the cover, and was like, okay, what is this about? And it is a hard hitting contemporary that is written in verse, and I loved it. It was a hard read, but it was a good read, and Olivia done a brilliant job at making the verse accessible. I don't read huge amount of verse books, so I felt like this was a really good entry point. If you don't read books in verse or poetry, this is a really good entry point. Just please look up trigger warnings if you decide to pick this up. Next, we have The Fey Princess. This year I picked up the Lost Boys, the Vicious Boys series. This is the last one in the series. I actually was quite lucky because I picked up this series not knowing anything about it, and just as I had came to the third book, the fourth book got released, and it just fell perfectly in place. This was a middle of the road read. I had fun. I read it really quickly. It was on Kindle Unlimited. I definitely had a good time with it. I gave them the first three stars, and this one a 3.5. And I recommend it if you're looking for a kind of retelling of Peter Pan, but with sexiness. I highly recommend it. The last book I picked up was Until You by Claire Contreras. I picked this up because I wanted to do some dark romance reading to see just how dark I can go with romance, and I figured that out. If you're interested in a deep dive into some of the deep dark romances I've read and where I fall on the spectrum, what I've enjoyed, what I've not enjoyed, please let me know in the comments below and I can make that video for you. I might just make it anyway, to be honest, because it sounds like fun. But I did read this. This was a sports romance, heavy topics. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed where the story went, and the book, even though long, felt like it went past quickly, but I would have cut it down maybe just a little bit. But yeah, I did enjoy this. I think I gave it 4 stars, but maybe on reflection it would be a 3.5. I'm finding this thing this year where I normally rate books on feeling. Like when I finish a book, I finish it and then I rate it, right? And I felt like this year I have went back and looked at my immediate ratings after, and now I'm disagreeing with them, having stepped back and had some time away from the story. So I hesitate to say star ratings now because I can't change them if I tell you them. But maybe I'm just overthinking it, and maybe at the end of the year, when all is said and done, if I've had a step back and looked at it from a more critical angle or had perspective, I can lower my rating or heighten my rating if I see fit. And then at the end of the year, I can run through all of the books I read and what ratings I gave them come the end of the year. But it does mean that my stats would be a little swayed. But I do think that reading is like having freedom in reading is like something that I really want to try and do, because the last couple of years I've been very structured and set in what I wanted. And this year I've been more mood reading, I've been more free with DNFs, and I've just enjoyed it more. And I've picked up some books that I wouldn't have normally picked up if my reading was as structured as the previous years. The next goal I had was to read my self destruct books, and I believe I picked 6 self destruct books this year, which is one higher than last year, but I've only read one. So I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Again, I immediately thought this was a 5 star when I read it. And I kind of want to stick to that because I really enjoyed it. I flew through it. I loved the characters. I loved the way that it ended. But this book made me realize that I gave another romance 5 stars, and I hate to compare romances, but if we were comparing, Book Lovers was the better book, but I gave them both 5 stars. And now I'm starting to think like, do I rate too quickly? Do I, when I immediately finish a book, should I step back and give myself a day or two before I rate something? Because it's really hard when I rate on the spot and then with perspective, I have a change of heart. So yeah, I read this. This was one book checked off my self destruct. I also have The Toll by Neil Shusterman on my self destruct. I need to reread Scythe and Thunderhead in order to finish this trilogy. Well, to get to Gleanings, which is the novella after The Toll. Um, I have reread Scythe, so I still have Thunderhead to reread before I can get to The Toll. Love Scythe, gave it 5 stars again, and it just reminded me that I really want to finish this trilogy and have it done because I enjoyed this so much, and I'm so annoyed at Pa Shannon for falling off the bandwagon. The next few are books that I have not read yet but would like to get to by the end of the year, which is Devil House by John Darnell and Cemetery Boys by Adrian Thomas, and he started it by Samantha Shannon, of course, along with Thunderhead and The Toll. If I read like one of these a month, then I could definitely potentially get these all read. But I maybe need to prioritize the ones I really don't want to get rid of before reading, um, so that if it does come to the end of the year and I have some left on this list, I have the ones that I'm least interested in left. Lastly, my goal every year is to have 50% of my reading to be physical books that I own. I own a lot of books, if you could not tell, and I want to make a conscious effort to pick up the books that I have spent money on. I spend money on these books. It's normally more than a Kindle book, audiobooks, dependable, but I buy these books and put them on my shelf, and then I don't prioritize them. And in the last couple of years, I decided that I want 50% of my reading to come from my shelves. Whether it's a new release that I buy or a backlist title, I don't care. I want it to be physical. I also, on top of this, I enjoy physically reading books. Like, it's my preferred format, it's my preferred preference. I do enjoy reading on my Kindle, and I'm a little bit fussy with audiobooks because I feel like I don't get immersed quite as well. I think it's just because my preferred reading for years has been physical. So I'm not used to the audiobooks. But I still like to prioritize the books that I buy, also like to prioritize my preferred method because that's what I enjoy when I read. So 43.2% of my reading this year has been physical. I have noticed that my ebook reading this year has been up quite considerably from the previous years. It's sitting at 35.1% of my reading, and I'm not mad at it because this year I wanted to make sure that because I don't have much space left on my shelves, I have a certain amount of books that I can buy before I have to unhaul. And I wanted to start to utilize my Kindle and Kindle Unlimited and the things that I can get cheap that don't take up space. So I wanted to utilize my Kindle. And if I find a 5 star, I can totally buy it later on down the line. For example, I just read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. There is a review for that book coming soon, so if you're interested, hit the bell and you will be notified when I bring that review out. Spoiler free, of course. So yeah, I picked that up on my Kindle. Now, in last year, I picked up Riley Sager's book physically, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I also gave The Only One Left a 5 star. So now I know that when I buy that book, it's not going to be wasted money because I gave it 5 stars. I would definitely reread it. I really enjoyed it. It's something I would like to have in my collection. But I didn't waste money on a book that sat on my shelf for years, realistically, not being read, and I also don't have space for it. So yeah, I want to utilize my Kindle more so that I don't have to buy so many physical books because my backlist is unbelievable and I want to make sure the books that I'm buying are ones that have a high chance of being 5 star or have a high chance of me unhauling to someone in my life so that I get even more use out of it. I have an unhaul coming up, and my one of my nieces has gradually started getting into reading. My influence, of course, and some books in that haul are unhaul are books that I read when I was younger and I've been hoarding at the bottom of my shelves for a long time. And now I feel like she's at an age where she can enjoy them. So yeah, I love doing that. It also makes me incredibly happy that I'm unhauling them to my niece who is now getting into reading. Now into more stats and charts. This is the part of the video where we get into more technical numbers. So this is my number of books per month. So my worst, I should probably just take this up to my face because I can't look all the way down here and up at you. This is my books per month, and my best month was March, and my worst month was tied with April and June. But when we look at my pages broken down per month, it then becomes March is obviously still going to be my best month because I just read the most books and that equaled the most pages. But it breaks the tie between April and June because April becomes my worst month with the least amount of pages read. I don't really see any rhyme or reason for this. I I read what I want to read when I want to read it. I am very much like, none of these numbers bother me. Like, if I complete my Goodreads goal and the few goals that I set out for myself at the start of the year, I am happy with my reading. Like, I want my self destruct, my new releases, and my Goodreads goal complete. I'll be happy. Everything else is just fun to look at. The next chart we have here is one that kind of interests me this year because it is book length. And I always feel like I read like shorter books. I always feel like I gravitate towards shorter books. But this year, I feel like there's more on the other side than there normally is. And I think that's because I'm mood reading. Because the thing is I've picked up, for example, I picked up the Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I put in a video maybe last year or the year before that this book intimidated me because of its size, because it's adult fantasy, because it's political fantasy. I did not feel like I could read that quickly. But in the last 2 months, I've been able to read The Final Empire and The Well of Ascension quite quick concession. Like, I feel like quick for myself. And that just, it just shows me that even though I gravitate towards shorter books, because whether it's subconsciously I'm thinking that I'll reach my goal quicker, or that I will be able to get to my other goals quicker if I read shorter books, I don't know. I just feel like when I decided this year that I was just going to let all the rules fly out the window, I have had such a good time. I've fell back in love with fantasy. I've been picking up books that intimidate me. I've been having a fun time with my ratings, which are all over the place this year. Whereas last year, I think they were quite concise. So let's just move on to my star ratings, shall we? So I compared them to the first half of the year last year. And so far this year, I've had 9 5 stars, which feels like a lot considering at this point I've read 35 books, right? So that is a good percentage of books that have been a 5 star, which means I'm picking up books. I'm mood reading, but I'm picking up books that are hitting, and that is what you want, right? So last year I had 3 5 stars by this point. So that is a huge incline of books that I'm reading in the first half of this year. And I wonder if it's because last year I was more structured in my reading, there was more of a schedule, I was more rigid in what I wanted from my reading. Whereas this year I am taking the soft approach. I am being very lenient, not lenient, free. Like, I'm just being free with my reading, and I feel like that is coming through on my ratings. Also, this year, on the other side of the 5 star, I'm I've gave out 1 and 2 stars. I've also DNF'd. Like, the freedom to DNF has been great. Although I do feel like the 2 books that I DNF'd will have people hating me. I DNF'd Haunting Adeline. Damn. Like, I like a good dark romance, but I could not root for this. Like, there's this scene with a gun. No, thank you. Also, oh, what was the other one? Den of Vipers. So yeah, as you can see, both of these were dark romances, and I just didn't vibe with them. I do enjoy a dark romance, but these are obviously too dark for me, or just not the right genre of dark. I have no idea. I guess I'll have to read more dark romances to really find where I fit in. But yeah, it's been a fun experiment to try all of these different genres and types of books. But because of this, I feel I have DNF 2 books, which is pretty much unheard of in my reading. I don't DNF very often. But I feel like it's helped me mood read this year. I also had, last year I only had a 2 star. Like, I didn't go lower than a 2 star. This year I have gave out a 1 star, and that went to Blood Orange by Harriet Tice. I did not like this. I read it. I bought it secondhand at a charity shop. I am really glad that I did because, like, it was so hyped. I had seen it in a lot of places, and I've seen Harriet Tice's work before, but this just was not what I was expecting, and I didn't like it. I also gave 2 stars to How to Sell a Haunted House. And again, this is another one in reflection that I would maybe bump down to a 1 star. but I'm going to keep it at the 2 star because there was a couple of things that I enjoyed from this story. Not much, but a couple. So like I'm DNFing, I'm giving out 1 stars when I don't normally. I'm being very, I don't know what the right phrase or word is because free doesn't really seem right. I'm just being very aware of my reading this year, and it feels very nice to kind of take that structure out of it. And I feel like I'm having the kind of fun that I had when I discovered the Mortal Instruments. When I discovered the Mortal Instruments, I didn't track my reading apart from Goodreads. I didn't do any of these stats or anything. And I just had fun. Like, I read these books while I was traveling to work. I read these books when I came home. Like, I read them first thing in the morning before I had to do anything. Like, these books gave me life. And okay, I might not like them as much now as when I first read them, but when I first read them, they were absolutely amazing. And I feel this year has given me the same kind of vibe. Like, I'm enjoying what I'm reading. I'm not second guessing what I'm picking up. I'm not thinking, oh, but this is a new series. Oh, but I should be reading this sequel. Oh, but this book's big and it's going to take me longer. And then it means I'm not going to get to anything else. Like, all these things play on your mind when you're reading. And it's really nice to just take a break from that. Let's move on to genres. I'm going to see if we're still recording here. That's because I am scared. I'm checking everything because my last video I made, my sound cut out in the last like 3 minutes of the video. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So I'm just making sure I am together. Right. So let's move on to genres. So this year I did want to widen my horizon with genres. My top 3 read typically for the last couple of years has been romance, thriller, and fantasy. Although fantasy has been getting smaller. And that's sad to me. I feel like, again, it runs into that fantasy takes me longer to read, it's more of a commitment, they're normally series, blah, blah, blah. But this year, I wanted to make sure that I was picking things up that maybe necessarily weren't in my comfort zone, or picking things up that were in my comfort zone, but something that I hadn't given enough time to, like fantasy. So, this year I read across 7 genres, and I now have 4 top genres instead of 3 because the third place is tied. So, my most read genre is romance because I do enjoy a good romance. They're fun, they're easy, they're candy, most of them, not the hard hitting ones. Even sometimes they're actually like really good, depending how they're written, of course. Um, I just think that romance is what I would turn to when I need something that is easy for me to just devour. And then thriller is kind of the same as romance in a sense. Like, I feel like I pick up thrillers when I am like in this place where I want to read something that's just gonna immerse me. And I feel like thrillers do that quite quickly. Like, because you're anxious to know what happens, because you're like trying to figure things out, I feel like I just fly through thrillers because I'm like, what the hell is going on? So these 2 genres I don't think will change. I think these are going to be my most read genres for years to come. And even though I am trying to read more outside my comfort zone, I don't know if these would change. But then again, my third spot is tied with fantasy and horror. So there is a new genre added in that could take the place of one of my top 3. Do I think anything will be out the top 2? Never say never. I don't know. But I do. I'm so happy that I can maybe change one of my top read genres this year. We will see how the rest of the year pans out. But I do think that this was such a good way of me to like try new things, and I'm not going to push myself to make the top 3 genres different. I'm not going to change how I pick books or how much of one genre I'm reading. I'm just going to continue the way that I've been this year, picking up what's taking my interest and doing this more of a loosey goosey vibe. And if it so happens that one of my top 3 genres get knocked off for another genre, great. It means I've read something different. It means that I've changed my reading up a bit. If it doesn't, still great. It means that I still love the three genres that are my old faithfuls. So the other thing that I wanted to track this year was book type, because I don't feel like I give enough time for series. I feel like I start a series, I maybe get addicted, and then I stop reading, it falls to the wayside. And then when I return to it, it's not as fresh in my brain, which takes away from the reading experience for me personally. So this year, I wanted to make sure that I was keeping my sequels read up. So this chart is rereads, standalones, series, and sequels. So the series are the new starts, and apparently I've decided to start all the series this year because I do have a pretty decent percentage of new started series. Oh, actually, I believe there's finished series on here as well, which does have a percentage. I like that. I would like this percentage to go up to 10%. I would like to finish enough series this year to have 10% of my reading being finished series. I would also like my sequel percentage to be at 25. A quarter of my reading being sequels, I'm more than happy with. The rest of it can get spread out between new series, rereads, and standalones. I'm not really worried about their percentages, but I do want to have an emphasis on prioritizing sequels and keeping that as at least a quarter of my reading. And even if if, even if finishing series stays at the 10% mark, like I'm happy with that. That's 10% of my reading that is finishing series that I've already started. So yeah, this is an interesting one that I will be very intrigued to keep tracking because I want to finish series. I want to also take the pressure off of myself of starting series because, like I used to say, I'm not allowed to start that series until I finish this series. And I have again a hard time DNFing books, so DNFing series is a really hard thing for me. But I do feel like this is tracking this will be a good way for me to hold myself accountable for the series and sequels and the new starts. But apart from that, I am happy with the way this chart is looking, and I hope it looks very similar come the end of the year. And finally, I'm just going to run through some goals that I have for the second half of the year. These are essentially the same as the first half. I would like to continue reading one new 2023 release a month. I can do that. Like, it's sometimes it's hard because there's multiple books, new releases that I want to read, and I don't just limit myself to one. If I have access to more than one, that does not include me buying more than one for my shelves physically, then I will read more than one in a month. But I think it's more my excuse me. I think it's more that I want to read at least one because I would like my reading to be fleshed out between backlist and new releases, and also so I can get in on some of the topics of conversation surrounding new books. So yeah, I definitely want to stick to this one. Also, there's so many books that are coming out that look good. I think my new release I'm reading this month is in Nightfall. I've forgotten the author's name. This is Amy McCaw's book YA book club pick for the month of July. So I think I'm going to be reading this for my new release for this month. And I'm excited. I can't wait. The cover is gorgeous. Obviously, quite simple. I would like to finish my self destruct books. There is not one book on my list that I want to get rid of without reading. So I need to prioritize these. This is the whole point of this challenge. And I think if I prioritize these, it will really help me be more aware of what I pick when I'm doing self destruct books. The next one's simple, keep my physical reading at 50%. Get those books on my shelf read. They're the priority before anything else. But also still be able to access and use my Kindle for take advantage of the fact that I can read it on Kindle and not have to think about space. So I definitely want to keep this at 50%. It's a goal I set for myself every year. Also because I enjoy physically reading books and it's my preferred method, this also forces me to make the time to be able to sit down with a physical book and just enjoy the act of reading. And I love that. Finally, is to get my sequels to 25%. As I just said, I would like to have 25% of my reading be sequels. I want to make sure that I'm not like pressuring myself out of reading them because they're not going to fit into a certain box, they're not going to fit into a certain goal, or they're not going to be good for videos. Like, I want to make sure that even though they might not fit into what I want, there still needs to be a priority there. For example, reading the Mistborn series, starting the Mistborn series, I've realized that I love immersing myself in series, and it's been a while since ones took my interest so much, and it makes me just want to keep a priority on the series that I start. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, leave a pie emoji in the comments. Let me know you're here. And I hope you have a great day, great week, great weekend, whenever the hell you're watching this. Remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Pick it up from the top, hit